Everybody, I just want to say that I've been in the struggle since 1961. I've been to Philadelphia more than once. My first trip to Philadelphia was North Philadelphia in '63, when 3 black revolutionaries were framed up on charges by Rizzo, racist Rizzo. They were accused of wanting to poison the water supply of Philadelphia. It was a huge sensation. And we fought them. Stanley Branch, the head of the NAACP, was with us. It came when the Black Panther Party had their national convention at Temple, and Rizzo attacked them and stripped them naked on the streets, put them in handcuffs, to try to repress them and keep that convention from taking place at Temple. And we all converged on Philadelphia in defense of the Panthers' right to have that convention. I've been here many other times when they bombed Osage Avenue, and we had a march against racism, when we saved the life of Amamiya in '95, when the execution order was given and signed. So I've been in Philadelphia before, and I appreciate how difficult Philadelphia is. It's called the city of brotherly love, but it's actually an extremely reactionary ruling class that sits upon this city. And I congratulate everybody here who's been in the struggle against this racist ruling class that sits here. Wealthy, fabulously wealthy group. I wrote this book, Capitalism at a Dead End, because I wanted to convey a certain message about where Marxist analysis brings us to in trying to understand where capitalism is today. And I want to say this. In all my years in the struggle, and I've seen the ups and downs of capitalism in the United States, worldwide, things have never been darker in one way, but things have never been brighter in another way. I believe that this coming generation, right now, is going to see tumultuous events, huge social upheavals that will change the relationship of forces in the United States and in other countries. That's why it makes me feel very optimistic historically about the struggle, even though right now the struggle has suffered setback after setback since before the Reagan administration, starting with Carter. So why do I say that? What does it mean to say that capitalism is at a dead end? Well, first of all, let's talk about, just for a moment, what is capitalism? We can talk about this more afterwards. To put it in a nutshell, capitalism is a system of class exploitation and wage slavery. It's a system based on the ownership of the entire economy, every store, every factory, every railroad, every hospital, everything, by one class, a property class. And all of that is operated by a propertyless class, us. They own the means of survival. We need to go to them and let them exploit us for wages if we want to live. If you want to look at capitalism in its raw form, that's what it is. It's a system where the mass of the workers have nothing but maybe a house. If they're lucky, they got a car. If they're lucky, they got maybe even a little vacation place, at most. if they're lucky. And nowadays, that's less and less true. And they have to sell their labor power to some employer. And if they can't do that, they can't live. They wind up being homeless, impoverished, living with their families, their parents, or their children, or whatever, trying to live on food stamps if they can get food stamps, if you can't sell your labor to a capitalist. And you can only sell your labor to a capitalist if that capitalist can make a profit. So that capitalist has to be producing stuff. That means you have to be producing stuff for them. Everything you produce or create, in the case of construction, or in the case of social services, everything you create or produce belongs to them. They take what you did, what you made, and they sell it. If they can't get a profit from selling it, they stop. When they stop, they lay you off or they cut your hours. It's that simple. 24/7, the schools, the media, everything is used to obscure this basic fact that this is what capitalism is. It's the exploitation of a property class, of a propertyless class, which is the vast majority, by a property class that owns everything. And that's the basis of the system. Everything else flows from that. Racism, sexism, homophobia, reactionary politics, it all flows from that, because we, being the vast majority, must be divided by the ruling class, must be kept apart, must be kept from uniting. And that's what all of this co-optation, if you will, everything else is about. The whole political structure can only be understood if you can see this as the foundation of it. Romney and Ryan, all their reactionary stuff about rape and homophobic stuff in their platform. And Romney just came out against the union. He came out and demanded that Obama come out against the union, and Obama's squirming around, trying to not come out against the union, hoping they'll settle it before he has to take a position, you know. The whole political superstructure is being shaken up by this strike, but you can see the class reflexes of the upper establishment, which is to come down on this, because this is wage slaves in rebellion. That's what it is in Chicago. There's no other way to put it. It's wage slaves in rebellion and on the big Chicago plantation. That's what it is. Chicago with its stockyards, its railroads, its steel plants. It's a big plantation. And as I said before we started this discussion, the children in the public school system of Chicago are 46% black, 44% Latino, 6% Pacific Islander, and maybe 7 or 8% white. And they're being destroyed. The neighborhoods are being destroyed, the schools are being destroyed. And what's at the bottom? What's at the bottom? Capitalism is in a deep, deep crisis. And that's at the bottom of this and the struggle in Chicago and everything else. Okay. That's capitalism. Why do I say capitalism is coming to a dead end? I'll make it as brief as I can. In the last 70 years, since 1940, 38, 39, every time there's been a recession or a downturn of one sort or another, the economy has come back. What does that mean? In every downturn, which comes about because of what I said to you before, when the bosses can't sell at a profit anymore and there's too many goods on the market and there's not enough money to absorb it, they shut down until everything liquidates, and then they can start up again, and they hire workers back. That's the way it's been for the last 10 recessions since 1940. Not this one. This is different. This is more like 1929. This is more like 1896. You can read the introduction. At a certain point, over certain cycles, capitalism comes to a point where it can't move forward. And it faces crisis, and their crisis becomes our crisis. Because they can't move forward, producing more, selling more, making more profits, they push it back on us. They begin to contract, and the working class gets it. We get laid off. Now, they've been at this now 4 years. How do they usually get out of one of these crises? Well, first of all, there's the normal liquidation of inventories, and there's some degree of revival, economic revival. But they also stimulate that revival by military production, by going abroad and conquering other peoples and getting loot to bring home, by bailing out industry and by subsidies to the banks, and by having a tax on the workers and lowering wages. That's how they begin to boost their profits back up, and they lift themselves out of these recessions. Now let's see where we're at now 4 years since December 2007, after this crisis began. They put in $16 trillion to bail out the banks, just in the United States. Forget about Europe. They spent $2 trillion on 2 wars. They've lowered everybody's wages. They've taken pensions. They've taken health care benefits. They've speeded everybody up who's left to work. And they've gone abroad and they conquered Libya. They destroyed Iraq. They're in the process of destroying Afghanistan. They're trying to overthrow Syria. And all of that, what's the end result? There's still 13 to 15 million people officially unemployed. There's maybe 25 million people who are unemployed, underemployed, or forced to work part-time because they can't get a full-time job, but they need a full-time job to keep their family going. There's some studies that say that the actual unemployment and underemployment could be closer to 30 million than it is. But that's, we haven't got the statistical apparatus to compile these figures. We're just going on what we can glean from the different authorities that do this. So after all of this, and after 2 years of, quote, recovery that began in June 2009, the economy is going down again. And the latest job numbers, I keep going down or stay flat. Meanwhile, every month 125 to 150,000 new young people come into the workforce. They don't even create enough jobs for them. A whole generation is shut out of the job market. The jails are filled with African American and Latino and poor white youth who have hit the wall. There's nothing for them. Trader Joe's, Walmart, every store is got college-educated people behind the cash register because there's no jobs. This is a generation that's facing a whole new capitalist system, not new in the sense of it's not it's a different kind of capitalism. It's capitalism at a new and devastating stage. That's the most important thing if we're going to think about the future. It's a tenet of Marxism and materialist thinking that says being determines consciousness. But that doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen mechanically or automatically. It takes time. Consciousness lags behind what's going on. It catches up later. It takes time for people to absorb what's going on. And also, it takes time before people can't go on in the way that they're going on. And when they do, that's when upheavals come. Now, if there was a way that anybody could see for capitalism to get itself out of this crisis, then you could have a different perspective on the future. You could say, okay, things are going to turn around. It's going to be like it used to be. We're going to get rehired and all that. And there'll be money in the community now. There'll be jobs. There'll be, the government will throw us a bone and so on. The opposite is happening. They're taking everything back. They're taking everything back. Why are they taking it back? Because they have a crisis. Because there's not enough production to have real profits based upon things that were made and sold. So the banks and the hedge funds and the private equity funds, they look around. What do they see? Something that somebody called the big enchilada. They see all these education budgets in these big cities, like New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles. They see all this money, and they want to get their hands on it because they've run out of other ways to get rich. And that's what the privatization and the charter schools and breaking the teachers' union with merit pay requirements and standardized testing, starving the education system, and then blaming it on the teachers. Starving the community, where children have to come to school with mountains of problems, maybe even from homeless situations, shelters, and then blaming it on the teachers, and then saying, oh, see, those teachers, they're no good, while they're starving funds for the education system, because the banks want to get their hands on it, because the system is in crisis. That's what it's about. So, my view is, I say my view, the Marxist view, the revolutionary view.
It's your view too.
It's my view. Yeah. Is to see the revolutionary side of things. That's the dialogue. Now, how does this get to be? Is this just an accident? No. It's a law of the system. What has happened in the last 30 years? Globalization, remember that? The scientific technological revolution, remember that? What does that all mean? It means computers, it means robots, it means sensors, it means giant ports with computerized cranes, it means jumbo jets, it means super tankers that can bring vast amounts of containers in, that can be controlled by refrigeration to bring our rose or our shrimp from Cambodia to Los Angeles, and it'll be in perfect condition. This is global capitalism, which has spread over every place and gathered into its hands workers from every corner of the world. And how do they do it? Technology. It's technology. It started when they first invented the first loom, the first power loom, to throw all the weavers in the cottages out of the job. They invented these looms, these big looms, and put them in one big room, and they became like little factories. That was a technological development. What was its purpose? To get rid of, to get cheaper labor, to get more production, to get rid of so many workers. What could be done by 1 or by 20 weavers could then be done by 5 or 1 or 3. Well, that's been going on since capitalism started. And now, it's run its course. It's run its course. If you read some sections here, you'll see some of the automation. Google has just created 10,000 vehicles that can drive themselves. GPS can track a bus driver or a truck driver wherever they go. If they stop for lunch for too long, they got you. I was in Dunkin' Donuts the other day, and I'm watching the drive-through, and up on top of a wall at the drive-through, inside us two little LEDs, and one of them gives the time that somebody came to make their first order when they talk through the microphone to the I don't know what you call it, the person who gets the order. And then the seconds start ticking. And if they don't get the person's money in the cash register and they're gone, within 2 minutes and 30 seconds, they begin to lose percentages. Their percentage of successful customers drops and drops. And if it drops too low, they get written up. If they get written up too many times, everybody gets fired. The manager too, maybe. That's technology. It speeds everything up. It makes wages low because it takes the skills of workers and puts it in machines and into software. And you could be trained for some craft. You could be trained as a machinist. You get to General Motors and say, oh, I'm a machinist, I'm a tool and die maker, let me get a job. They have machines that will mill to 1 millimeter, no, not millimeter, millionth of a millimeter. They have automated milling machines. Your skill, forget about it. Try McDonald's. Try Walmart. Try someplace else. Go back to school. Sorry. Take a walk. You train to be a computer programmer. You go for the job. It's in India. You train to be to go to a call center. Forget about it. It's in Ireland. They've created a global competition of workers, and they've sped up all of work, and they've lowered all of these wages. And how did they do it? By technology. By fighting each other to get profits, they fight each other forever and ever. The capitalists. By doing all this. By who can get rid of more workers, who can speed up more workers, who can get more production out of fewer workers. And what's the whole result of this process of all these capitalists doing all of this? The whole process is this. They create more and more goods and services in less and less time. And the workers get lower and lower wages, and they can't buy the stuff. At the end of the day, the system can't absorb it because they only want to sell it for a profit. They don't care if there's 2 million extra houses, and that's what happened in 2007 and 2008. There was 1.65 million extra houses on the market that nobody wanted. There were so many homeless people in the United States. who could use a house. There were so many workers who needed a house, but they were being thrown out of their houses while all these extra houses were on the market because they couldn't be sold for a profit by the developers. That's what happens. That's what happens when the capitalists fight each other to each one gain an advantage. And that's what they do. They create more technology, it's more and more expensive, but they get rid of more and more workers. Amazon just bought a a robot company. The robot, it goes over to the shelf, takes the thing that's supposed to be gotten, puts it in a case, brings it over to the right place where it's supposed to be. And then it runs back and does it again, and again, and again, and again. And it can go up to 25 miles an hour. Fast as a racehorse. And that's what our generation has to compete with. Those are the conditions in which we're entering into the capitalist system. And it can't go on like this. It's unsustainable for them, and it's unsustainable for us. So it's on that basis that I say I've never seen darker times in my life, and I've never seen times that are so pregnant with revolutionary possibilities for the future. And I think that that's the way we all have to, if we're feeling bad about something or something is going to not work. I mean, we all felt bad about Wisconsin when the workers took the capital, the students in the community, and then the politicians and the labor leaders sold out and pushed them into an election. That was a disaster. But we all got uplifted by the fact that this was the first seizure by the workers in decades. They actually seized the capital and occupied it for 2 years. So it was a step forward, and then it got pushed backwards. We don't know where the Chicago teachers' strike is going to go. We don't know where the Chicago teachers' strike is going to go. But it's a rebellion. It's a symptom. It's a sign that people can't take it anymore, and they're taking this, okay? Whether it'll be, dissolved next week and that'll be the end of it, that's not the significance of it. The significance of it is that it happened, and that it's a sign of the future. My position, our party's position, is that there's only one way to resolve this. Since it all begins with private property of the means of production, the only way to resolve this is to end private property of the means of production and to make the entire economy, everything, the property of the mass of the people and the workers and the oppressed. That's the only way. To socialize the property. To make it socialized property that's used for the purpose of human need. To abolish the profit system altogether, completely, because you can't have a half a profit system. You either have a profit system or you have a system without private property where it's socialized. And socialized property means everybody. Because after all, it fits. It fits because everything that's made, from this cup to this table to the Boeing aircraft to the thing that's crawling around on Mars right now, it's all made by human labor that's cooperative, objectively. It's made up of all of our labor from all over the world. There's nothing that was made by anybody except a craftsperson who knits a sweater. But this is made up of people who, it could be oil workers from Indonesia who created the oil, that created the petrochemicals, that created this plastic. We don't know. Or the dye in that box. We don't know where that dye came from. I mean, all of labor is socialized labor. Everything. You build the buildings. you get wood. That wood may come from Canada. It may come from Thailand. You don't know where the wood comes from. Chances are it comes from Canada or some pine forest someplace. And that means people cut this down. People in the lumber mill sawed it through. People then cut it further, then transported it. Then it got on a ship, then or a train and came in. It's all the transportation workers, the depot workers, the clerks who marked it in. There's nothing that's not the product of social labor. Nothing. So the problem is, how can there be all of this social labor that collectively cooperates to create every bit of wealth there is, and that it's all owned by a handful of rich people? That's the contradiction of modern society, and it has to be broken. It has to be broken just to save our generation and to save the working class and the oppressed. And that's the perspective that I wanted to discuss with you all tonight. And I think that we're looking, if you look ahead, you need to keep your eye on the ball, which is the socialist objective, and to fight capitalism, private property, and the profit system, and all the politicians and judges and police and journalists and everything that they have. That's it for me.